Well, Ubisoft didn't have a very good day on Friday, did they? According to Market Insider here and other news outlets, Ubisoft shares plunged 16% on Friday after it released a profit warning, delayed a trio of video games, and announced an overhaul of its development process. And some people were surprised by this, but I wasn't one of them, because for a long time now I've been looking at Ubisoft's output and I've been thinking that there's a problem with it. And the problem for me is that all their games are basically the same. Or maybe not all of them, but an awful lot of their games are basically the same. And they rely on the games as service model. And I thought that was going to come back and bite them on the arse. And I think we're seeing that here. Ubisoft don't feel the same way, though. According to Yves Guillemot, he said that Ubisoft underestimated the difficulty of drumming up interest in a sequel to a live multiplayer game, especially after updating and improving the original game. What he's talking about there is Ghost Recon Wildlands versus Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And he seems to think that Wildlands was so good that it had a negative effect on Breakpoint because Breakpoint wasn't, it didn't implement its changes perfectly, as he says here. The changes needed to be implemented perfectly. Gameplay innovations needed to be implemented perfectly. I think there's more of a problem there, though, because I don't think Ghost Recon Wildlands was a particularly stellar game. It wasn't a bad game. It was okay for what it was, but it was just another Ubisoft game. And I'm probably going to say this a few times during this video. It was just another Ubisoft game. And so many Ubisoft games feel almost identical now. And I know people are going to come to me and they're going to say, oh, wow, Ghost Recon isn't the same as Far Cry, and Far Cry isn't the same as Assassin's Creed. But the reality is that in many respects they are. They're the same game with a different skin, with very much the same gameplay loop. And I, for one, am getting bored of it. But again, Ubisoft feel slightly different. Yves Guillemot went on to say, we're not happy with the fact that our decision impacts significantly the short term of our financials. That's putting back the games. But we believe that we're taking then this opportunity to definitely further elevate the quality of our games by coming with stronger identity features and differentiation. I think that's what he meant. Obviously, he's French and he's got a very specific way of putting things across. But that's the gist of what I get, that he's looking to, I don't know, elevate the quality of their games and give them more identity. But when he says that, he's not talking about overhauling the game's root and branch. He's talking about, I don't know, making them look slightly different. I don't know. It seems to me that the problem here is something he hasn't really recognized. That the big problem with Ubisoft games is that they're just another Ubisoft game. And that's, for me, that's what it is. It's all their games feeling the same. And for me, I really do feel that they need to diversify their portfolio. They need to produce games that are different, that aren't just games as service. As I say, nearly all their recent output has basically been reskins of the same game. And I'll say them again: Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Ghost Recon, The Division. How much difference is there between those games? In the broad brushstrokes. Okay, in the detail, there may be some different detail and the character models are different and the weapons are different. But the story arc and the gameplay arc is much the same. And frankly, the stories often don't make a lot of sense to me. For me, they need to make some games as opposed to being obsessed with this live service model. And it's not long ago that they said that they were going to focus all their efforts on the live service model. And it's fine to have some of those games or some of those products that are live service models, but you can't have all of them being like that because people get bored. They need to reduce the amount of egregious monetization in the games as well. You get the live service model, and one of the reasons for having that, it seems to me, is that it makes it easier to monetize. And if you look at Ghost Recon Breakpoint, well, it's everything. Everything in it can be bought. And I know some people are saying that that's your choice and you can play the game without buying them, but that's just towing the company line as far as I'm concerned. And when you have this in games, when you have monetization there, root and branch from the beginning of the development, it does affect the development of the game. I said this about FIFA ages ago. The game development changes when your focus is on monetization. It's bloody obvious. And going back to what I was saying about gamers being bored, if you get the same retreads year on year, of course you're going to get bored. We all like familiarity to some degree, but there comes a point when you need something different. Even if you like cornflakes, sometimes it's nice to, ring the changes and have muesli or a bacon sandwich or a muffin or something. And there's also only so many hours in a day. With games of service, and I know Jim Sterling's been going on about this for a long time, and I absolutely agree with him on this. You cannot spend time playing loads of these games. You've only got so many hours in a day to play video games. And as you get older, I've got a kid. Sometimes I only get to play maybe an hour a day. Sometimes I'll go for days without being able to play at all. And the games as service model expects you to put in hour after hour after hour after hour after hour in these games. And it's just not sustainable. And with Ubisoft putting all their games into this model, trying to make all their games this style of game, well, it's going to be a problem. And as I say, with the microtransactions, we're bored and we're also annoyed. I'm sick and tired of monetization, loot boxes, and all sorts of different ways of trying to screw money out of us being front and center of all the games we play. Not all the games we play, but a lot of the games we play. This became really obvious to me yesterday. It really became stark for me yesterday when I sat down and I played The Outer Worlds for a couple of 3 hours. The game in a lot of respects is very familiar. It feels a bit like Fallout 3 to me and, some aspects of other games. And not surprisingly, given that Obsidian have worked on the Fallout franchise in the past with Fallout New Vegas. But it's got a new coat of paint. It looks different. It's got a slightly different aesthetic and different humour and slightly improved gunplay over the older games, which you would expect. But it was old school in another way too. It's, kind of an open world game with absolutely no microtransactions. Not yet anyway. Let's hope they don't stick them in later down the line. And that for me was like sliding into a warm bath with a hot cup of tea on the side after spending hours being jostled by a heavy storm. It was so nice. Such a relief. Here, I had my controller in my hand and I was playing a game. And I didn't have to click off the bloody shop and I didn't have to put up with loot boxes being dropped on me before I could play and all that kind of crap. I sat down, I set up my character and I played the game. Didn't offer me to buy extras or a different hat or all these other bits and pieces that you get in games now. I could just go through and I could choose the bits I wanted and I could go in and I could play the game. A game. Not some shop with nice graphics built around it in order to make us part with our money. That's so rare now. Oh, God, it was refreshing. And as I say, I've long thought that Ubisoft have been heading for trouble. When you put all your eggs in one basket, in this instance, the games as service model, it's never a good idea. You just shouldn't do that. Everybody knows that. But Ubisoft have gone even further. Not only have they put all their eggs in one basket, they've bet the bloody farm on that basket full of eggs. The games as a service model has been extremely lucrative, and a lot of people have made a lot of money from it. But it isn't sustainable. It isn't. Not when you've got so many of those games out there. And as I said, that seems to be all Ubisoft wants to make now. If Ubisoft don't realise that and they keep doubling down, their stock is going to continue to fall. And it doesn't matter how much corporate gobbledygook Yves Guillemot spews. It's not going to help them. They need to look at what they're doing, and they need to diversify their portfolio. They need to look seriously at it and see what they can do to give us some significantly different experiences, both in terms of story and the way they build their games. The games as service model is running out of steam because there are just too many of those kinds of games on the market. And Ubisoft is a company most responsible for that. You know, they're not the only one. As I say, there are plenty of companies looking at these kind of games, and we all know what happened with Anthem when EA tried to do it. But Ubisoft's games, I know I've said it before, but their games are competing with each other, not just with their competitors. How's that a way of running a business? I'm no businessman, but it would seem to me that if you're putting out products that are competing with your own products, you're going to suffer. You need to have different products that appeal to different markets and different people. Oh. They need to put some of their energy and their innovation into creating something different, in coming out with different types of games, and not looking at all their games and thinking, how can we shoehorn the game as service model into this game? How can we make this game another game we can monetize? Diversify. Give us different types of games. Give us something that we're surprised by, that we don't look at and think, oh yeah, it's another Ubisoft game. Because that's the problem. I know I keep saying it, but I look at Ubisoft games and, oh yeah, it's a Ubisoft game. They're all the bloody same. And, you know, the same old tired formula just isn't going to cut it anymore. You need to take a good look at your portfolio, and you need to come up with some other way of doing things. Keep the games as a service model for some of your games, but give us something different. We're bored and we're fed up with being screwed. Please. You've got good development teams. You can do many good things with your games. They're not terrible in many respects, or some of them are. But you've got the potential there, Ubisoft, to make great games. Please, do it. Stop thinking about the money first and foremost, and think about creating something good. And then, as I've said with other companies, we'll buy it. But anyway, that's what I think. You guys may have a completely different outlook. And if you do, let me know in the comments. And if you like this one, do the usual thumbs up and all the rest of it, subscribe. And I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.